What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video, and in this video I'm going to be diving into MFC format. So if you don't know, whenever I finish the coverage of a regular Yu-Gi-Oh format in the game's history, I generally go back and look at what the format would be like if the limited list was not really considered, if the format just on release of the new cards was taken into account, and so you're able to play with all the new cards at 3 copies. I call these sort of like unlimited formats, and people don't generally play them, but they are sort of interesting to think about as hypotheticals. And if you really do want to play them, we do have channels for them on my Discord server, links in the description down below. And, it's a great place to find games in these formats and any of the regular formats that I cover. But MFC format is kind of different from a lot of the other unlimited formats that I've covered in the past, because with a lot of those unlimited formats, they're just like these incredibly broken cards in the sets that are allowed to run around at 3 copies. And in Magician's Force, like, you had Breaker the Magical Warrior and Try Infecting Virus. But the real broken card in the set, Magical Scientist, was already at 3 copies. So it's not like there's really too much more there to break in the format. So I really think that Magician's Force format is just sort of like Breaker format, but the aggressive decks can get a little bit more aggressive because you have just more better beaters. And I'm not sure every deck will play like 3 Tribe Infecting Virus, 3 Breaker the Magical Warrior. Um, but I do think that, like, for the purposes of this video and testing things out, playing 3 each of these is, the funnest thing to do, and will hopefully allow us to see breakers and tribes as much as possible. Now, this deck isn't like too, sort of labbed out and optimized. I sort of just threw it together based on, my regular breaker format decks. And, basically the main change is the triple tribe, triple breaker. I've also got some other good monsters in here like Egg-tailed Force, Fiber Jar, Injected Fairy Lily, 1 copy Magical Scientist. You could play more than this, but I figure given all the ways to search it out, it's fine just at 1. We got triple Mystic Tomato, a Sangan, Sinister Serpent, Spirit Reaper, triple tribe Infecting Virus, as I mentioned, and a Witch of the Black Forest. Now, tribe and breaker can both be searched by Witch, so that's very, very nice. For these spells, we got Chain of Heart Confiscation, Dark Hold, Liquid Duo, Graceful Charity, Heart of Feather Duster, Mirage of Nightmare, Monster Reborn, Triple MST to pair with the Mirage, Painful Choice, Pot of Greed, Raigeki, Snatch Steal, Forceful Sentry, Call of the Haunted, Imperial Order, Mirror Force, Ring of Destruction, and then 3 Raigeki break. Now, I have this in here largely as a tech against like Scientist decks. This is very good against that deck. You're able to disrupt a specific part of their combo. But I think in the future, I'd honestly switch these out maybe with Torrential Tributes, because Torrential Tributes are, I think, better in this more aggressive metagame. When you've got triple breaker and triple Tri-Infecting Virus running around, you just want sort of the like 1-for-1 clears as opposed to the 2-for-1 clears. But, that's sort of something that came about from testing out the deck, and, it would be something to look into for the future if you play this format for yourself. For the side deck, we've got a Jinzo Triple Wanghu, mainly in here for Scientists. We've got a Kaiku, Yatagarasu, Heavy Storm for more back row focus decks, Nomen of Crossouts plus Ceasefire for more flip focus decks, Triple Royal Decree for more trap focus decks, and then Devil Torrential Tribute. As I said, I think Torrential Tribute should probably be in the main at 3 copies instead of the Raigeki breaks. For the Fusion deck, we sort of got the toolbox, but again, just like in Breaker format, Fusion deck wasn't limited at this time, so you could sort of proxy in whatever Fusion monster you need. But the main ones we got here are Dark Balter the Terrible, Ryu Senshi, and Thousand Night Restrict, although others like Super Robo Yaru, Reaper on the Nightmare, Fiend Skull Dragon, those sorts of things can come up as well. But that's going to do it for the deck breakdown here. I'm not really going to spend more than 1 video on this format. I think it's very, very close to Breaker, but I do think it's sort of fun to explore. So let's dive into some games and see how this deck does. Okay, to start off with, we've got a game against PJ Darkness here. A frequent guest of the channel, always a pleasure to have them on. We will be winning the rock, paper, scissors, so we are indeed going first here. And we are going to hopefully draw some hand rips. I mean, that's the best thing you can do going first in this format. But unfortunately, we don't draw hand rips, but we draw a killer hand. Wow. This is one of the best hands that I've seen in the game's history. Or not in the game's history, but like one of my best hands that I've seen on camera. Anyways, we're going to start with this Painful Choice, sending triple hand rips and 2 tomatoes to give us a monster here. We want to be able to just, set our entire back row for the Mirage to draw 4. And they're going to give us the tomato here. And also, if we set 4, we're kind of, or if we set it all plus Mirage, we're kind of insulated against Harpy's Feather Duster because we've got the IO as well. But we're going to set the tomato. and set everything, and then fire Mirage. We've got MST for the Mirage, but if they go for like a Heartbeat Feather Duster, we've got IO, which shuts down Mirage and lets us keep it around for later turns. So I think we're pretty well insulated here, no matter what happens. We draw 4 off that Mirage. They go for a Forceful, and we're actually going to IO this. We want to keep our Pot of Greed for later, and we've got pretty good monsters here as well. They're just going to pass back to us, and that's really good. We could just let the IO lapse, but honestly, I feel like we've got a pretty good position here, and there's not much they can really do about this board besides, like, you know, maybe Exiled Force or something. That only pops 1 monster. Overall, like, oh, well, there's an out to the board, but not through IO. Overall, I think this board is extremely good, and there's not really much they can do without spells. So keeping IO up, I think, is pretty good, even though it does clog up our back row. They're going to bring out a Tribe Infecting Virus, and they are going to use priority on this. And they're going to call, unfortunately, zombies. If they'd called plants, I think I would have actually fired the Raigeki here, popping the Tribe, so that we could get in for more hand rips with the Reaper. But as is, I think it's fine. Just let this go through, and they're going to pop the tomato as well. Then they're going to attack directly for 1600. Next turn, I can crash with my Tribe Infecting Virus. I can also let IO lapse and go for something else there too. We also draw Exiled, so we can go for that instead. I will need to let the IO lapse here, and I'm not sure how good of a move this was. Maybe I should get the IO up because we are pretty much in a winning position here. But I let it go just, you know, because I want to fire the pot, I want to set the ring, I want to do a bunch of stuff to deal with the tribe. But I think I should have, in hindsight, kept it up. Anyway, I'm going to bring out this Magical Scientist, bring out a Dark Balter. I think this was a misplay. I bring out Dark Balter because I'm like, I can bring out pretty much any fusion monster here. But the monster I should have brought out instead is Super Robo Yar because it gets in for 600 extra damage. But I wasn't really thinking about that. I was just like, I'm in such a commanding position that I'm probably going to win here either way. So I don't really have to worry about that. But, you know, minor misplays like that can add up and lead to a lost game. I'm just going to bring out a Sinister Serpent, crash into our Scientist, and that's ultimately fine. They do have Pot of Greed, which is pretty unfortunate for us, and they're going to pass back to us, though. I feel pretty good about this hand still. We're going to bring out a Tribe Infecting Virus, attack in for 16, and just pass back to them. I don't want to commit too much into, like, a Heartbeat Feather Duster, so I feel fine just leaving the board as is. They're going to grab back the Sinister Serpent, go for a Graceful Charity. I'm really regretting not leaving the IO up, as that, you know, sort of let them get back into the game here. They've got Upstart Garden as well to draw another card here. They're going to think about this a bit, and then they're going to fire Legendary Ocean, so it's on a bit of a sort of janker deck here. Luckily, with our Change of Heart, we should be able to win it. We're going to fire MFT in the end phase to pop their back row. It's an IO, so I feel pretty good about that. And we're just going to go for the Change of Heart here, flip it up. It's a Catapult Turtle. That will just be game on board because it's 1200 plus 1800, and then I can distribute things off for Turtle. So, you know, pretty commanding game one. You know, the multiple tribes and breakers didn't really come up. I mean, we did draw a tribe there, and our opponent also drew a tribe. But, you know, we didn't really see more than one of those. So, you know, as I said, I think this is very, very similar to breaker format. You're probably just going to see tribe and breaker a little bit more often. So, we're going to go into game two, though. Looks like they're on a bit more of a jank deck. And we got breaker in hand, so that will deal with that, like Legendary Ocean, things like that, hopefully pretty well. And they're going to set one pass back to us. And we're just going to bring out Scientist, pay 1,000, bring out Dark Balter, and hit over the set. Because, you know, if it's like a Serpent, that's really good for us. If it's a Grizzly, a Sangan, a Witch, etc., bringing out the Balter is the best play here. So we're going to attack in for 300, then send Balter back to the extra deck, pass back to our opponent. And they're going to think about this a bit and go for a Legendary Ocean, then summon out a Legendary Fisherman. Legendary Fisherman is kind of annoying on this board here. We can't use Change of Heart or Dark Hole on it while Legendary Ocean is up. We could bring out the Break of the Magical Warrior and pop the Legendary Ocean, but that seems like kind of a waste. But I don't know, it might be worth it. We'll have to see what I do here. They're going to fire Mirage. Luckily, we do top deck MFC here, so we're able to pop that Mirage and prevent them from drawing 3 cards here. Now I'm going to think about this a little bit, and I'm just going to bring out Exiled Force, pop the Legendary Fisherman, pass back to our opponent. I figure this is fine, and it clears their board, and hopefully they don't really have much else to do here. They've got one more card in hand. If it's like a monster, we've got Reborn to bring back Exiled or Magical Scientist, so we can deal with whatever monster they bring out. Looks like they've got a Premature Burial, though, so they'll bring out the Legendary Fisherman yet again. Attack in for another 1850. We're dropping kind of low here. We draw Mirror Force, though, which gives us a bit of protection. So now instead of going for something like Reborn, Exiled, Pop, Legendary Fisherman, we can actually do something a bit more interesting here. We're going to bring up Breaker, and then we're going to pop the Legendary Ocean. Then we're going to take control of a Legendary Fisherman, attack in for 1850 plus 1600, which is 3450. Now, this may be a bit of a greedy play, but I've got the Mirror Force here, so I feel somewhat protected here. And if they just hit over the Breaker, I'm also fine with that. I just want to get in a little bit more damage here. And they're going to go for a painful choice, which might be punishing me a little bit. They're going to send quite the 5 cards here. Grace, Charity, Pot of Greed, Metamorphosis, and Harpy's Feather Duster. Now, I feel like I can't give them meta. If they give them meta, they bring out Dark Bolter. And that's really bad for us, as Dark Bolter just shuts down our Reborn and our Dark Hole. I mean, it doesn't, shut down our Mirror Force. So, we do have ways around it, but I feel like we don't want to just give them access to an Omni spell negate, basically. Now, the Harpy's Feather Duster is also kind of rough for us because it clears our Mirror Force, which is annoying. But if we give them the Harpies, they might think that, our back row is like an MST or a bluff or something, and they might not fire the Harpies. So that might be an okay option to give them. Catapult Turtle is kind of interesting because on its own, it doesn't win the game right now. So you might think, oh, Catapult Turtle is the easy choice. But if they do have a copy of Last Will, they just win the game here because they can Last Will out a Scientist after they tribute off something for Catapult Turtle. So, Catapult Turtle is a little bit risky in that regard. And then Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity just give them more draws, more potential outs to the scenario. So I actually think in the grand scheme of things, I want to give them the Harpy's Feather Duster. It is annoying because they will clear the Mirror Force and thus be able to get over the Breaker potentially and get in for more damage. But we do have Dark Hole as a follow-up, and while they don't have Legendary Ocean on field, that Legendary Fisherman will die to the Dark Hole. So I feel fine about giving them the Harpies, and they do indeed not fire it. So I think that, it sort of paid off. It was a bit of a risk, but I think it was worth it. And they do have Last Will here, so if we had given them the Turtle, we would have actually lost there if they had a Scientist in deck, which they very likely do, and there it is. So I think this was the right play overall. They're going to pay 1,000, bring out 8,000 Eyes Restrict, clear the Breaker there, and then pass back to us. We draw a Spirit Reaper, which is pretty nice. We can just crash with the Scientist there. We actually have a bit more of an interesting play here. We can Monster Reborn here, bring back a Scientist of our own, pay 1,000 life points to bring out a copy of Super Robo Yaru. And this is actually the only fusion monster that you can bring out of Scientist that would actually do it here. As if we brought out like a Roaring Ocean Sea Snake that attacked in for, well, no, because we need the Scientist on field for the damage here. If we brought a Roaring Ocean Sea Snake with 2,100 attack, that would deal 1,800, and then we've got 600 more in hand, which would leave them at 50 life points left. Super Robo Yaru gets up to 2,200 when it's attacking a monster, so that'll be 1,900, and then plus the 600 in hand. That will indeed be the end of the game there. So Super Robo Yaru putting in work. Don't neglect it from your side deck, or not your side deck, but your extra deck. It can come up in certain situations. But I thought this was a very good showing for the deck, and it shows how, against more jank strategies, the higher level of aggression with the multiple breakers and multiple tribes can actually come up. We didn't see multiple breakers or multiple tribes that game, but I think we probably saw them with more frequency. So that's probably why we opened breaker and we drew tribe last game. So I think that, basically the format's like breaker, but it's just slightly more aggressive. But I've got one more game to show for y'all in this format, just to show off what a bit more of a meta matchup looks like. So let's dive into that now. Okay, we've got a game against 2003 57931, who has appeared on the channel in the past, although they haven't appeared in a while, I think. So always a pleasure to have them on. Glad that they're back on the channel here. They're going to win the rock, paper, scissors, so they will be going first here. And let's see what they do. This would have been a really good going first hand with Comfy there. But unfortunately, you can't always, open when you have the hand rips. You can't always go first, so they're going to do a forceful send back, change of heart, set 3, set 4, pass back to us. The Scientist here can allow us to push through and potentially make a pretty big play here. We're going to summon out a Scientist, pay 1,000, and normally I don't bring out Senshi in addition to Balter here, but I really do feel like we really do need this play to go through, because we are already kind of down on cards with the forceful, and they know our hand as well, so I feel like I do just need to clear their set no matter what the cost. So we are just going to go for this. It is a Magician of Faith, so I'm glad that the Balter sticks and is able to hit over that. And then we'll attack in for 300. Confiscation, the last card out of their hand. It's a Tomato. And I feel pretty decent about this. They're kind of in top deck mode now. They could have back row the do stuff, but unfortunately they do top deck a Tribe Infecting Virus. And, as I mentioned, this is a bit more of an aggressive format, so top decks like that are more likely. Tomato here is kind of nice. We're going to go for a painful choice, though. Send triple Raigeki Break, and then we're also going to send 2 Breakers. Now, I figure Breaker is a bit of an interesting threat, but also if they give us Breaker here, that tells us a lot about what they've got. That means they do have like a chainable back row that does get rid of Breaker, and so we might want to play a bit more defensively, like setting Tomato or something instead of just going for Breaker. So they do indeed give us the Breaker there. So because they do, I figured they might have like a ring set. They might have like a TT set. I mean, TT wouldn't be that bad, but I think ring would be pretty bad for us. Mirror Force as well would also be rough, as it's a 1 in 3 chance of hitting it. So I just set this Tomato here. Unfortunately, we do get punished for that play, as they do have Scientist here, and they're able to bring out a Dark Balter. They will be able to hit into our set. It's a Tomato, so that will get negated. They'll attack in for 1900. Then in main phase 2, they're going to fire a ring on their Dark Balter. So that was what I mentioned, where, Breaker would lose to ring. And so, yeah, I mean, I think either way here, we were probably dead, because Breaker would have 19 when they ringed it, and then they'd get in for another 19 this turn. So yeah, we were dead there either way. But still, I think that was a pretty good send-off. Painful. Maybe I could have sent some things that just cleared the Tri-Infecting Virus no matter what, like maybe Raigeki or Darkle as well. I think this was ultimately fine, and I think the play that we made would have worked basically if they didn't top deck Scientists. But Scientists have 3 copies as well. They might be playing 3 copies, so again, that's also more frequency on the Scientist draws here. So I think for the game 2, I think we do side in some TTs, maybe, I forget. But we do keep in the Raigeki breaks. We're going to start with a Witch set, then set MST and Raigeki break. I feel like this is pretty good, getting the double draw here. And we draw another MST and an IO. That's pretty decent. Opponent's going to open a Scientist and bring out a Dark Balter as well. They'll be able to hit over our Witch, which is very unfortunate for us. But we're going to fire a Raigeki break to get rid of the Balter there. They're just going to set 2 and, bring out a Restrict in the end in main phase 2 to clear our set. Luckily for us, it is a Witch here. They also do need to take 1,000 more for Scientist, because, they have to keep paying for it. But we're going to use the MST that we accidentally revealed to clear our Mirage here. We're going to summon out Breaker that will get ringed, so we'll both take 19. And at this point, I realized that, they should have taken an additional 1,000, 4,000 and Restrict. We're going to set IO and MST here, pass back to them, and they're going to pay another 1,000 for a Ryu Senshi. That's fine by us. That can't attack in. They're going to bring out a Breaker, which is a bit unfortunate. Hopefully they hit the MST, and we can chain that and hit the back row there. They're just going to attack in for 19 there, and then they're going to fire the Breaker on our IO, which is very unfortunate, but not the worst thing in the world. I think we're still in a pretty good position. We're going to fire this Force. We'll see what they've got there. They've got Sinister Serpent, Breaker, and Snatch Steal. So of these, I'm a bit more annoyed by the Serpent, because the Serpent just keeps coming back for them. And the Snatch Steal isn't really useful against our board, given we've got MST and Magical Scientist. And Magical Scientist isn't the best of Snatch Steal if I don't have another monster as well. So I feel like Breaker could also be annoying, because if they summon out Breaker, pop our set, then we can chain it, pop their back row. So yeah, I feel like Serpent is the best play here, although it's a bit iffy. I could definitely see other plays being correct instead. We're going to go for the MST hitting their back row there. It's just a Torrential. And maybe this was a mistake, because now, they've got the Breaker to stop our Snatch Steal in case they bring out like another monster with Snatch Steal or something. But yeah, we're just going to go for it anyways. We hit in to their Magical Scientist with this Restrict we brought out, and sucked up the Breaker with. I feel like we had to have that play go through, or else we were in a pretty bad spot. But they're going to bring out Breaker, hit in for 1900 there, and then they're going to set 1, pass back to us. Mystic Tomato is a pretty good draw. Now, I have the read that their set might just be a bluff, because, they had the Snatch Steal in hand. That's a pretty good bluff, because it would die to things like MST anyways. And, they don't want to represent that they have no interaction. So what I do here is I go for the Snatch Steal and the Breaker. I choose not to pop the back row, and I just bring up Mystic Tomato attack in. If that set is something like Mirror Force or TT, then I feel fine about this because all they've got in hand is a snatch steal. They could potentially draw like a breaker or a tribe. But I think ultimately this is still pretty good, and I feel like we just got to go for this risk. We're sort of playing around just one card in their deck, which is Mirror Force. Um, I mean, I guess we should have potentially summoned the Tomato, then Snatch Shield the Breaker. But I sort of was playing around MFT more than Torrential. Either way, that's just a Harpies, so that will indeed be the end of the game there. So very, very interesting game two there as well. And I think that these games are kind of showing off what this format looks like, with this sort of good stuff mirror, where it's just a bit more aggressive than it is in something like Breaker format. And you really do need those sort of one-for-one removals as opposed to the Raigeki breaks. I mean, the Raigeki break did come up that game, but you really can't be affording those like two-for-one trades. So we are going to go into game three here, going second, and this is a pretty good opener. Unfortunately, they have Forceful, so they can send back MST here, which is kind of interesting. But they've got Comfy, so that makes a lot more sense there. They're going to pitch the Graceful from our hand, get rid of the MST. They're going to go for a Graceful of their own, pitch 2. Then they're going to set 3, fire a Mirage. And this is probably over before it's begun. I mean, that is about as good of an opening as you can get. But we're still going to try and make it work here. We're going to summon up Breaker, pop one in their back row. We hit Raigeki, which is honestly pretty good for us. And then we hit into a Sangan, so they'll search out a Tomato here. We're just going to set a Mirror Force here, pass back to them. They know about Mirror Force Torrential. We don't want to play into like Harpy's Feather Duster. But I figure, one of the things that we might want to avoid playing into is something like their own breaker. If they bring out their own breaker, pop our back row, then they'd have to crash into our breaker to clear the board there. And so I figure that's the same thing as like if we had Torrential. So I don't really want to do that, but I do want to play around like if they bring out breaker, just try and hit into our breaker without popping the back row. Or if they bring out like another big monster and just try attacking in. I feel like it's better just to set the Mirror Force there instead. They've got MST on their Mirage. And they'll add back this Serpent here. And they're going to fire a Snatch Shield on our Breaker. Kind of unfortunate, but they're going to bring out Yada as well. And luckily we do have the Mirror Force here to clear that board away. And they're just going to set 2 pass back to us. We draw another tribe, which lets us just get aggressive with this tribe. Unfortunately, TT will clear that up. We're going to set our TT, pass back to them. They're going to bring out a Witch, and we don't want to TT that, as that seems like a really bad trade. And then they're just going to set another pass back to us. We draw Raigeki Break, which isn't the most useful for us, but we can bring out this tribe and just hit into the Witch. And they're going to think about this and let that go through. And they'll search out a Breaker here. That's fine by us because we've got the TT. But this Raigeki Break is kind of rotting in our hand unless we can get something to give us a little bit more advantage, because right now we're kind of in top deck mode and Raigeki Break is really bad in top deck mode. So we TT that board because we figure that they can just attack into our tribe, then pop the back row because they know what the back row is. So I feel like it's worth TTing there. We set another TT, pass back to them. And we have Tomato, we TT that. They'll pass back to us. We draw a Reborn here. Now we could save the Reborn for later, but I feel like we just want to get aggressive here. And so we'll just bring back like our own tribe. I feel like that's probably the best thing to do. But we could have definitely saved it and just set the Raigeki Break or something here. Because then that sort of, it lets us be more reactive with our tribe. But yeah, they've got Mirror Force either way. So, I mean, we had to clear that anyways at some point. They're going to hit in with Tribe Infecting Virus here, get in for another 1600, and then pass back to us. We've got Tomato here, which isn't the best into Tribe, but it is still pretty decent. Because, if we set Tomato, they attack into it with Tribe, we get out like Sangan or Witch. That's not really worth it for them to Tribe. Then we can potentially get out like Sinister Serpent from our deck to pair with this Raigeki Break. So I feel like this is ultimately fine. We're not going to set the Raigeki Break in case they've got Spell and Trap removal as well. We want to save it for when it's actually online. Unfortunately, they do have another Scientist here. Or not another Scientist. This is their first Scientist of the game. But yeah, so they will be able to bring up Balter, clear the Tomato, get in for 1900, set another pass back to us. And we draw Fiber Jar, which, that is very unfortunate with Scientists on field. If they can bring out something with Scientists, hit over Fiber Jar. And so this won't really be that useful to us. So actually what I'm going to do here is just set a lone copy of Raigeki Break. They've got an MST though. So this probably will be the end of the game. I mean, they've got 1900 damage on board. And if they've got any other monster or Ring of Destruction, that will just be all she wrote. And unfortunately, they do indeed have this Ring of Destruction. So, yeah, I mean, they didn't have any other monsters that could do it here, but the ring will indeed do it. So that will indeed be the end of the game. But I think that this was a good showing of how much more aggressive this format can be than Breaker, but also a good showing of how it sort of just feels like it's still Breaker format, right? You know, I didn't show off like the Scientist matchup, but the Scientist deck probably isn't going to change at all because that deck didn't really play Tribe or Breaker to begin with. I mean, maybe we'll play more of them in the side deck, but like, I feel like this matchup is still pretty much largely the same, and the format is generally the same overall, except with slightly more aggressive decks in the good stuff slot. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below and what you think of this sort of unlimited format. Do you think that there's actually some new decks that are sort of generated by the addition of triple Tribe Infecting Virus or triple Breaker? Or do you think that the deck is basically the same as it is in Breaker, and actually you don't even want to play 3 Breakers or 3 Tribes because maybe it bricks too much, or maybe there are just other cards you can play instead? Let me know down in the comments below. I look forward to our discussions as always. And also, if you like this sort of content, please do subscribe to the channel. We are very, very close to 1,000. I'd really like to reach that by the end of the year. But until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.